Catherine Alvarez's wooden heels echoed across the polished oak floor as she descended the staircase, her navy blazer perfectly pressed silver hair swept into an elegant bun. The scent of Marissa's freshly brewed coffee filled the air, mingling with the morning light streaming through the tall windows of the Alvarez mansion. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, taking in the familiar scene. Her son Robert absorbed in his tablet, scrolling through financial reports, while her grandson Emmett quietly assembled a Lego tower in the corner, unusually subdued for a 7-year-old who normally filled the house with chatter. The morning routine unfolded with practiced precision. Catherine sipped her orange juice, its sweet tart flavor clearing her mind for the day ahead. She checked her leather handbag, ensuring all documents for the board meeting were in place. Kissing Robert's forehead and ruffling Emmett's soft hair, she moved toward the door with the composed authority that had guided Alvarez Lumber through a decade of growth since her husband's death. "Have a wonderful day at school, sweetheart," she told Emmett, noticing how his large eyes followed her without his usual enthusiastic response. Just a small nod, something hesitant in his expression that she couldn't quite place. Catherine pressed her car remote, watching as the black Cadillac's lights flashed in welcome. The vehicle represented more than luxury. Ernest had bought it the year before his heart attack, insisting the CEO of Alvarez Lumber should project success even in difficult times. She had kept it immaculate, another way of honoring his memory. As her hand reached for the door handle, the sound of rapid footsteps made her turn. Emmett raced across the driveway, his small legs pumping frantically as he clutched at her jacket hem. His face had drained of color, eyes wide with a fear she had never seen in a child. "Grandma, don't get in the car," he whispered, his voice trembling as he glanced nervously toward the house where Marissa was cleaning up breakfast dishes. "It's really dangerous." Catherine crouched to his eye level, keeping her expression calm, despite the sudden chill that ran through her. "What is it, honey? What's going on?" The boy looked around frantically, as if afraid of being overheard, then leaned closer until his lips nearly touched her ear. "They said Grandma's car is going to explode because Mom ordered it." The words sliced through Catherine like a blade of ice. Her blood ran cold, but decades of business negotiations had taught her to mask reactions. She stroked Emmett's hair with a steady hand while her mind raced through the implications. Marissa, her daughter-in-law of 7 years, the woman who called her Mom, who brought her tea when she worked late, had ordered her death. Before Catherine could respond, Marissa appeared at the doorway, Catherine's laptop bag in hand. "Mom, you forgot this. I already charged the battery." Her smile was radiant, perfect, but Catherine now noticed something indefinable in her eyes. A calculation, a coldness that had always been there, hidden behind warm gestures and affectionate words. "Drive safe," Marissa added, her tone sweet as honey, yet somehow hollow in retrospect. Robert emerged behind his wife, adding with casual affection, "Yeah, Mom, this new project is keeping you too busy. Take care of yourself." His voice held the same loving quality it always had, but now Catherine sensed a distance, as though she were suddenly standing outside the family portrait, looking at a scene that no longer included her. "Hey, thanks, honey," Catherine replied, her voice betraying nothing as she took the laptop bag from Marissa's manicured hands. "But I have a bit of a headache today. I think I'll take a taxi to work instead." Marissa's perfectly shaped eyebrow lifted slightly. Just a flicker of surprise, or was it concern? "Why, Mom, I can drive you if you want." "No need. I'd prefer to go alone." Catherine waved away the offer with casual confidence. "Actually, I'll take Emmett to school on the way. We can spend some time together." Without waiting for a response, Catherine took her grandson's small hand, which felt cold and trembling in her grip, and walked toward the gate where the doorman Marissa had recommended 2 years ago, hurried to open it. He bowed politely but avoided meeting her eyes, another detail that now seemed significant rather than trivial. Outside the gate, Catherine pulled out her phone and ordered a rideshare, holding Emmett close as they waited. The boy nestled against her without speaking, his body tense with fear. When the white Toyota arrived, she helped him climb in and gave the driver instructions to take them to Emerson Elementary before continuing to Alvarez Lumber headquarters. Once they were safely moving through the tree-lined streets of their exclusive neighborhood, Catherine turned to her grandson, keeping her voice gentle despite the urgency pounding in her chest. "Emmett, can you tell me exactly what you heard, every detail, sweetheart?" The boy pressed his lips together, gathering courage. "I was playing hide and seek by myself in the storage room yesterday when Mom came in with 2 Chinese men. I hid behind the big boxes because I was scared. They talked funny, not like us." Catherine nodded encouragingly. "What did they say?" The tall man said something about the old woman and accident, and Mom laughed. Emmett's voice dropped even lower. Then they talked about the brakes on your car and how no one would know. Mom said after she's gone, Robert will inherit everything and the company will be ours. Each word hit Catherine like a physical blow. She had built Alvarez Lumber from a modest family business into a $150 million enterprise after Ernest died. Robert worked as operations director, but he lacked her vision and drive. He had always been more interested in the lifestyle his family's wealth provided than in the business itself. Did you recognize the men, Emmett E.? Had you seen them before? The boy nodded slowly. They came to the house 3 times when you were on business trips. They always talk to Mom in Chinese, and she answers them. I didn't know Mom could speak Chinese. Neither did Catherine. In 7 years, Marissa had never mentioned speaking Mandarin or any Chinese dialect. What else had her daughter-in-law concealed outside the school? Catherine held Emmett's shoulders gently. You did the right thing telling me, brave boy. This is our secret for now, okay? Don't tell anyone else, not even your dad. As the taxi pulled away from the school, Catherine didn't direct the driver to Alvarez Lumber. Instead, she gave him the address of a coffee shop downtown. There, seated in a quiet corner, she made a call to Joseph Martinez, the company's former security director who had retired 2 years earlier. Joseph, it's Catherine Alvarez. I need to see you immediately. It's not a social call. It's a matter of life and death. Joseph Martinez arrived 20 minutes later, his 72-year-old frame still carrying the military posture from his years in Special Forces before joining the FBI. After Ernest died, Joseph had been Catherine's rock, helping her navigate the male-dominated timber industry with strategic advice and unwavering loyalty. Someone's trying to kill me, Catherine stated without preamble once they were seated in a private booth. She recounted Emmett's revelation, watching Joseph's weathered face grow increasingly grim. I need to know if this is real or a child's misunderstanding, she concluded. Joseph's dark eyes narrowed. Emmett's a smart kid. If he says he heard this, I believe him. But we need evidence before going to the authorities. I need to know who these Chinese men are and what they want with my company. Let me do some digging. Marissa Bradford, what's her background? Catherine realized how little she actually knew about her daughter-in-law, beyond the basics. MBA from Stanford. She met Robert at a timber industry conference in Seattle 7 years ago. Said she worked in international sales for a materials company. Her parents are deceased. Car accident when she was in college. She has no siblings. Joseph nodded, making notes. I'll verify everything. Meanwhile, don't go home. Check into a hotel under a different name. Don't use your credit cards or phone. They might be monitoring them. I can't just disappear, Joseph. I have a company to run. You can't run anything if you're dead, he countered bluntly. Go to work normally tomorrow, but be vigilant. I'll have something for you by evening. That night, in an anonymous hotel room paid for with cash, Catherine couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying every interaction with Marissa over the years, searching for signs she had missed. The thoughtful gestures, the interest in the company, the careful cultivation of relationships with key employees. Had it all been calculated, and Robert? Was he an active participant in this plot, or a manipulated pawn? Joseph called at 7 a.m. I need to see you, not on the phone. They met in a park 3 blocks from Alvarez Lumber headquarters. Joseph handed her a manila folder. Marissa Bradford doesn't exist, at least not until 8 years ago. The real Marissa Bradford died in a dormitory fire at UCLA 12 years ago. Someone stole her identity. Catherine's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were surveillance photos of Marissa meeting with 2 Asian men at an abandoned warehouse. These were taken yesterday afternoon. Who are they? Lin Jiang and Wei Chen, representatives of Wei Timber Corporation, one of the largest lumber companies in China and your main competition in the Asian market. Catherine remembered the company. They had tried to partner with Alvarez 3 years ago, but she had declined their offer, uncomfortable with their business practices and environmental record. There's more, Joseph continued grimly. Your daughter-in-law has been making 3 a.m. phone calls to Shanghai for months. And there's a Cayman Islands account in her name that received a $1.5 million wire transfer from a shell company linked to Wei Timber last week. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. Industrial espionage. They want our proprietary wood treatment technology. After Ernest's death, Catherine had poured resources into developing an environmentally friendly process that enhanced wood durability by 60% without toxic chemicals. a trade secret worth hundreds of millions in the right hands. Only 3 people knew the complete formula: Catherine herself, her chief chemist, and Robert. They can't just steal it, Catherine reasoned. The process is protected, the documentation secured. Unless they have someone on the inside with full access, Joseph pointed out, like the CEO's son who would inherit everything if something happened to his mother. Robert wouldn't, but the protest died on Catherine's lips as she remembered the financial reports showing Robert's declining personal accounts. Her son had always lived beyond his means, and she had bailed him out discreetly more than once. "We need to know if he's involved willingly," Joseph said. "I've prepared some surveillance equipment. We need to bug your home, especially Marissa's office and your private study." That evening, while Robert and Marissa attended a charity gala, Catherine and Joseph installed tiny listening devices throughout the mansion. In Marissa's elegant home office, they discovered a false bottom in her desk drawer containing a Chinese passport in the name of Mei Li Wei. "Let's see what else we can find," Joseph murmured, carefully photographing the passport before replacing it exactly as they'd found it. Catherine accessed Marissa's computer, which was surprisingly unlocked. "She must feel secure in her position," Joseph observed as they copied files onto an encrypted drive. Among the documents, they found correspondence in Mandarin between Marissa Mei Li and Wei Timber executives discussing the acquisition target and timetable for integration. Most disturbing was a detailed file on Catherine herself. Her habits, schedule, security measures, and medical history, including the notation, "No autopsy likely if death appears natural. History of hypertension in family." They had just finished and reset everything when headlights swept across the driveway. Joseph slipped out the service entrance while Catherine made her way to her bedroom, heart pounding, but resolved to act normal until they had a complete picture. The next morning at breakfast, Catherine studied her son as he absently kissed her cheek before returning to his phone. Had the affectionate gesture become merely habit? Was he complicit in plotting her death? The thought brought a physical pain to her chest that had nothing to do with her family's history of heart problems. She caught Emmett watching her anxiously from across the table and gave him a reassuring smile. The boy had become her unexpected protector, and she would make sure he remained safe no matter what happened. At the office, Catherine reviewed the company's security protocols with new urgency. The proprietary wood treatment formula was stored in a heavily encrypted server with multiple authentication requirements. Physical documentation existed only in a specialized safe in her private office with a second copy in a bank vault downtown. If Wei Timber wanted the technology they needed, either Catherine's cooperation or her death. That afternoon, Catherine convened an emergency meeting with her most trusted executives, excluding Robert. She explained that she had received intelligence about potential corporate espionage targeting their proprietary technology. "Effective immediately, I'm implementing Protocol Evergreen," she announced, referring to their highest security measure. "All research data will be compartmentalized. No single person besides myself will have access to complete formulas. All electronic communications are subject to encryption and review." When Robert burst into her office an hour later, his face flushed with anger, Catherine knew her suspicions had merit. "What is this emergency protocol? Why wasn't I informed before implementation?" "Security concerns," Catherine replied calmly, watching his reaction. "We have credible information that Wei Timber is attempting to access our treatment process." Robert's eyes widened slightly before he controlled his expression. "That Chinese company that wanted to partner with us, why would they resort to espionage?" "Because I wouldn't sell to them, and our technology gives us a significant market advantage." Catherine leaned forward. "Robert, is there something you want to tell me?" Her son's face paled momentarily before he forced a laugh. "What would I have to tell you? I'm just surprised you'd make such a major decision without consulting me." "As CEO, I don't need consultation for security measures." Catherine maintained eye contact. "But as my son, I would hope you'd tell me if something was wrong. If you were in some kind of trouble, for instance." Robert's jaw tightened. "Everything's fine, Mom. You're being paranoid about this Chinese company. Not everything is a corporate conspiracy." After he left, Catherine sat motionless, absorbing the pain of his deception. Whatever Robert's involvement, it was clear he was hiding something. But was he an active conspirator in planning her death, or merely a pawn in Marissa's scheme Joseph called that evening? "We've got something from the bugs. You need to hear this." In a secure room at Joseph's apartment, Catherine listened to a recorded conversation between Marissa and Robert from their bedroom the previous night. "What's with your mother's sudden security protocol?" Marissa's voice held controlled irritation. I don't know. She mentioned something about Way Timber trying to steal technology. Robert sounded nervous. Does she suspect anything? The sharpness in Marissa's tone was unmistakable. How could she? Nobody knows about our arrangement except us and your contacts. This could jeopardize everything if she starts investigating. The timeline was perfect. Her car, the mountain road. It would have looked like a tragic accident. Now she's got the whole company on high alert. Maybe we should wait, Robert suggested. She's planning to retire in 2 years anyway. I'll inherit controlling interest then. 2 years? Marissa's laugh was cold. The deal was for immediate transfer of the technology. Way Timber won't wait 2 years, and neither will I. We need that money now, Robert. Or have you forgotten the people you owe? I haven't forgotten. Robert's voice dropped. But this is my mother we're talking about. Your mother who still treats you like an incompetent child at 40, who built an empire from your father's company while you got the scraps. Don't go soft now. This is business. Catherine switched off the recording, her hands trembling despite her effort to remain composed. He's involved, she whispered the confirmation of her son's betrayal, cutting deeper than she'd imagined possible. But reluctant, Joseph noted. Marissa's the driving force, and she mentioned Robert owing people money. Let me follow that lead. The next day brought more revelations. Joseph discovered Robert had accumulated massive gambling debts, over $3 million to some very dangerous people. He had secretly leveraged his shares in Alvarez Lumber as collateral, putting him at risk of losing his inheritance, even without Catherine's knowledge. Marissa must have discovered his vulnerability and exploited it, Joseph concluded. But there's more to her than being an opportunist. The communications we found suggest this was a long-term plan by Way Timber. They placed her specifically to infiltrate your company and acquire your technology. 7 years, Catherine murmured. She's been patient, I'll give her that. We need more concrete evidence before going to the authorities. These recordings alone won't be enough to prove an attempted murder conspiracy. We need them to take action. Catherine nodded, her mind already forming a strategy. Then we'll give them exactly what they want, an opportunity they can't resist. The plan came together over the next 2 days. Catherine would announce a weekend trip to the mountain lodge where the company held executive retreats. The winding mountain road was the perfect setting for a brake failure accident. But instead of driving herself, Joseph would take her place while Catherine monitored from a secure location with police informed and ready to intervene. Before implementing the plan, Catherine met with her longtime attorney and friend, Jessica Reynolds. Together, they prepared legal documents that would protect the company and Emmett regardless of the outcome. Are you sure about this? Jessica asked. It's dangerous even with precautions. I've spent my life building this company from what Ernest left me, Catherine replied. I won't let anyone destroy it, not even my own son, but I need to know exactly how far they'll go. The morning of the planned trip, Catherine made a show of packing her weekend bag and loading it into the Cadillac. She kissed Emmett goodbye, whispering in his ear, "Remember our secret. Grandma will be fine." The boy clung to her tightly, his small body trembling. "Promise you'll come back." "I promise," Catherine assured him, her heart aching for the burden her young grandson carried. Robert and Marissa watched from the doorway as Catherine prepared to leave, their expressions carefully neutral. "Enjoy your weekend, Mom," Robert called. "You deserve the break." "Call us when you arrive safely," Marissa added, her perfect smile never reaching her eyes. Catherine nodded, noting how neither offered to accompany her, despite the supposedly treacherous mountain drive. "I'll be back Sunday evening. Take care of Emmett." As planned, Catherine drove only as far as the first gas station, where she switched places with Joseph. He would drive the Cadillac to the mountain road, while Catherine followed in a rental car at a safe distance alongside 2 private security officers Joseph had arranged. The mountain road was notorious for its sharp turns and steep drops. If someone wanted to stage a fatal car accident, this would be the ideal location. Catherine watched through binoculars from a hidden overlook as Joseph navigated the Cadillac around the curves with expert precision. 3 miles up the mountain, it happened. The Cadillac suddenly accelerated on a sharp curve, then swerved erratically. Even from a distance, Catherine could see Joseph fighting for control as the vehicle headed toward the guardrail. At the last moment, he managed to veer away from the edge and bring the car to a stop using the emergency brake and downshifting. Catherine's heart pounded as she watched Joseph emerge from the vehicle, appearing to check underneath it, while actually activating the hidden cameras they'd installed. He was staging the scene to look as though he'd survived the crash, but was injured, slumping against the car as if dazed. Within minutes, another vehicle appeared, a black SUV that parked 100 yards back. Through her binoculars, Catherine recognized Lin Jiang and Wei Chen, emerging cautiously approaching the Cadillac with calculated movements. "They're here to confirm the kill," the security officer beside her muttered. "Just as you predicted." Catherine watched in horror and vindication as the men peered into the car, then checked beneath it, apparently confirming the brake line had been cut. Wei Chen spoke into a phone while Lin Jiang took photographs of the scene. "Send in the team," Catherine instructed the security officer who relayed the command. Within moments, unmarked police vehicles converged on the scene, apprehending the surprised Chinese operatives before they could flee. The evidence was irrefutable. The brake lines had been professionally severed in a way that would cause them to fail at high speed on a curve. Lin Jiang and Wei Chen had come specifically to confirm Catherine's death, carrying falsified documentation to help them access the scene as concerned passers-by. Their phones contained communications with Marissa May Lee, including a message sent just that morning. "Package in transit. Confirmation expected by noon." Catherine returned to the city not in triumph, but with a leaden weight in her chest. The conspiracy had been confirmed, but now came the most painful part, confronting her son and the woman who had infiltrated their family. She met Joseph and Jessica at the downtown office of Alvarez Lumber, where they established a secure command center. The FBI had been brought in due to the international corporate espionage aspects of the case. "We have enough evidence to arrest them now," the FBI agent informed her. "We can have teams at your residence within the hour." Catherine shook her head. "Not yet. I want to confront them myself here. I need to understand why my own son would participate in my murder." Against the agent's advice, Catherine called Robert. "I need you and Marissa to come to the office immediately. There's been an emergency with one of our major contracts." An hour later, Robert and Marissa arrived at the seemingly empty office building. Catherine had arranged for them to be escorted directly to the main conference room, where she waited alone, her back to the panoramic windows overlooking the lumber yard where stacks of premium timber, the foundation of the Alvarez legacy, stood in orderly rows. The door opened, and Catherine turned slowly to face her son and daughter-in-law. Their expressions shifted from confusion to shock as they realized Catherine was supposed to be driving up a mountain road, her brakes destined to fail at the deadliest curve. "Mom!" Robert's voice cracked. "I thought you were at the lodge." Catherine studied him, searching for any remnant of the boy she had raised, the son she had loved unconditionally. "There was a change of plan," she replied evenly. "Someone tampered with my car. The brakes failed on the mountain road." Marissa's composure slipped for just a moment before she forced concern into her expression. "Oh my God, are you okay? Was there an accident?" Fortunately, the driver was highly skilled. He managed to avoid going over the edge. Catherine's gaze locked with Marissa's. "Interesting that you immediately assumed there was an accident, May Lee." The name hit Marissa like a physical blow. She took an involuntary step backward, her perfect facade cracking completely. Robert looked between them in confusion. "What did you call her?" "May Lee Wei," Catherine repeated. "Daughter of Chairman Wei of Wei Timber Corporation. Your wife's real name before she stole the identity of a dead American student and was planted in your path at that conference 7 years ago." Robert's face drained of color. "What are you talking about? Marissa's parents died in a car accident when she was in college." "The real Marissa Bradford died in a dormitory fire at UCLA 12 years ago," Catherine corrected him, sliding a file across the table. "Your wife has been lying to you from the moment you met. Everything was orchestrated. Your chance meeting her interest in you, all of it designed to gain access to Alvarez Lumber and our proprietary technology." Robert turned to Marissa, who had abandoned all pretense of innocence. Her posture had changed, her expression hardening into something cold and calculating. When she spoke, her accent had subtly shifted. "You have no proof of anything," she stated flatly. Catherine pressed a button on the conference phone. "Joseph, please come in with our guests." The door opened to admit Joseph, Jessica, 2 FBI agents, and, most damning of all, Lin Jiang and Wei Chen in handcuffs. "Your associates were arrested at the scene of my attempted murder," Catherine informed them. "They've already started talking to reduce their sentences." Robert collapsed into a chair, his world visibly crumbling around him. "I didn't know they were going to kill you," he whispered hoarsely. "Marissa said it was just to frighten you into retiring early. The brakes would fail, but in a controlled way, just enough to scare you. You'd be fine. And you believed that... Catherine's voice held more sorrow than anger. A brake failure on Mountain Road. I trusted her. Robert buried his face in his hands. I needed money. The gambling debts. They were threatening me, threatening Emmett. Marissa's laugh was cold and dismissive. You were always weak, Robert, just like your father said. Catherine stiffened. My husband never called our son weak. Not to your face. Marissa's smile was venomous. But in private he knew Robert would never have his vision or strength. Ernest was building Alvarez lumber for you, Catherine, not for his disappointing son. The cruel words hit their mark. Robert flinched as if physically struck years of insecurity confirmed in the worst possible way. You manipulated him, Catherine stated, her voice steady despite the rage building inside her. You found his vulnerabilities and exploited them for your father's company. Business is business, Marissa replied with a shrug. Way Timber needed your treatment technology to compete globally. Buying you out would have been simpler, but you refused our offers. So we found another way. By planning my murder. A regrettable necessity. Your son was going to inherit everything anyway. We just accelerated the timeline. The FBI agents moved forward. Mei Li Wei, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage, identity theft, and wire fraud. As they read her rights, Marissa maintained her composure, looking almost bored by the proceedings. Only when they mentioned that the Chinese government had already agreed to cooperate with the investigation, due to the international ramifications, did a flicker of genuine fear cross her face. Robert was also placed under arrest, though Catherine had arranged for different charges that might allow for leniency given his cooperation. As they led him away, he looked back at his mother, his eyes filled with remorse and shame. Emmett, he said hoarsely, please take care of him. I always have, Catherine replied, her heart breaking for her grandson who would now face the public humiliation of his parents' crimes. When they had all gone, Catherine remained alone in the conference room, staring out at the lumberyard where she and Ernest had worked side by side for 20 years before his death. She had survived the loss of her husband and built an empire from his legacy. She had now survived a murder plot orchestrated by her own family. The betrayal cut deeper than any business setback ever could. The son she had raised, the company she had built, the legacy she had protected, all of it now tarnished by scandal and treachery. But as the last light of day cast long shadows across the stacked timber, Catherine Alvarez straightened her shoulders. There would be time for grief later. Right now, Emmett needed her. The company needed her. And she had never been one to crumble when faced with adversity. The strongest trees, she whispered to herself, echoing what Ernest used to say, are not those that never face storms, but those that bend without breaking. Catherine gathered her things and walked out with the dignified grace that had carried her through decades of challenges in a male-dominated industry. Tomorrow would bring legal battles, public relations nightmares, and the painful process of rebuilding trust within the company. But she would face it all with the same resilience that had defined her life. For now, she had a frightened 7-year-old boy to comfort, a boy who had saved her life with his courage and love. The rest could wait until morning. The media storm hit Alvarez Lumber like a hurricane the morning after the arrests. Catherine's phone buzzed incessantly with calls from journalists, industry contacts, and concerned employees. She ignored them all, focusing instead on the small boy sitting across from her at the breakfast table, pushing cereal around his bowl without eating. Is my dad a bad person? Emmett's question hung in the air between them, his young face creased with confusion and pain. Catherine set down her coffee cup, choosing her words with the same care she used when negotiating million-dollar contracts. Your father made mistakes because he was scared and confused. That doesn't make him bad. It makes him human. But he tried to hurt you. Emmett's lower lip trembled. The police took him away. Sometimes people we love do things they shouldn't when they're backed into a corner. Catherine reached across the table to cover his small hand with hers. Your father loves you very much. That hasn't changed. The boy's eyes welled with tears. Will he go to jail forever? Not forever. Catherine had already engaged the best criminal defense attorney in California for Robert despite everything. He's cooperating with the authorities, which will help his case. The doorbell interrupted their conversation. Catherine nodded to Mrs. Vasquez, the housekeeper who had worked for the family for 15 years and was now helping care for Emmett. The older woman disappeared down the hall, returning moments later with Jessica Reynolds. The FBI agents are here for Emmett's statement, Jessica announced quietly. I've told them we'll do this on our terms. Here not at the station with me present as his advocate. Catherine nodded gratefully. Emmett, these people need to ask you some questions about what you heard that day in the storage room. Just tell them exactly what you told me. Jessica will stay with you the whole time. As Jessica led Emmett to the study for his interview, Catherine retreated to Ernest's old home office, now her private sanctuary. The room remained largely unchanged since his death. The same heavy mahogany desk leather chair and wall of bookshelves filled with forestry manuals and business texts. She ran her fingers along the desk's smooth surface, drawing strength from the connection to her husband. A knock at the door announced Joseph's arrival. The security expert looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, evidence of the sleepless night spent coordinating with authorities. The FBI has seized all of Mei Li's electronic devices. They've already uncovered communications going back 8 years detailing her assignment to infiltrate American timber companies. Alvarez wasn't the only target, but we were the primary one because of our treatment technology. Catherine processed this information with grim satisfaction. And Robert's involvement, limited to the last 6 months when his gambling debts reached critical levels. There's evidence she manipulated him for years, subtle psychological pressure isolating him from other relationships, creating financial dependency. Classic handler techniques. A wave of conflicted emotions washed over Catherine. Relief that her son hadn't plotted her death from the beginning, mixed with anger at his weakness and grief over the years of deception. The corporate espionage charges are bulletproof, Joseph continued. Multiple documented attempts to access secure servers, photographed proprietary documents, encrypted communications with Way Timber executives. The murder conspiracy is equally solid with the physical evidence from your car and the surveillance footage. Catherine turned to face the window overlooking the garden where Emmett used to play with his parents on weekends. Those idyllic family scenes now felt like elaborate performances staged for her benefit. What about Emmett's custody situation? Robert's lawyer is arguing for bail based on his cooperation in primary custody of Emmett. The prosecution opposes it due to flight risk. He wouldn't leave without his son. Catherine knew this with certainty. Whatever Robert's failings, his love for Emmett was genuine. The judge might agree to house arrest with electronic monitoring, Joseph suggested. Otherwise, temporary guardianship would typically go to the closest relative. You. Catherine nodded absently, already calculating the adjustments she'd need to make. Emmett would need stability therapy protection from the media circus. Her already demanding schedule would become even more challenging. Have the board members been briefed? Initial calls were made last night. Emergency meeting scheduled for noon today. I'll need a complete security review of all our systems facilities and personnel. If Mei Li planted others inside the company, we need to find them. Joseph placed a folder on the desk. Already started. 3 employees hired during Mei Li's tenure have suspicious backgrounds we're investigating. I've also pulled surveillance footage of everyone who accessed the R&D wing in the past year. Catherine opened the folder to find detailed profiles of the suspicious employees, complete with timeline anomalies and questionable connections. Joseph's thoroughness reminded her why he had been Ernest's most trusted advisor. One more thing, Joseph added hesitantly. The FBI found surveillance equipment throughout your home and office. Not our devices. Different technology Chinese manufacture. They've been monitoring you for years. The violation sent ice through Catherine's veins. Every private moment, every business discussion, every interaction with Emmett, all potentially observed by unseen eyes. Her home, the one place she allowed herself to be vulnerable, had been compromised all along. The board meeting that afternoon became a test of Catherine's leadership unlike any she'd faced before. Gathered around the conference table were the 12 directors of Alvarez Lumber, their expressions ranging from shock to anger to calculation. Several had been Ernest's friends. Others were more recent additions representing major investors. Let's address the elephant in the room. Catherine began, standing at the head of the table with the composed authority that had guided her through decades of challenges. My son conspired with a Chinese corporate spy who happened to be his wife to steal company secrets and potentially harm me. The FBI has arrested both of them, along with 2 Way Timber operatives. The blunt assessment silenced even Walter Simmons, the most combative board member who had been whispering to his neighbor moments before. Our proprietary wood treatment technology remains secure. The company's operations continue unaffected. What we face now is a public relations challenge and a security review to ensure no other breaches exist. Marcus Chen, head of the audit committee, cleared his throat. The market opened down 12% this morning on the news. Major customers are calling with concerns about stability. Which is precisely why steady leadership is essential, Catherine countered. I've prepared a comprehensive response plan. She distributed folders containing detailed strategies for media management, customer reassurance, employee communications, and security enhancements. This is impressive work, acknowledged Elena Vasquez, one of the newer board members. But Catherine, we must discuss succession planning. This incident raises obvious questions about the company's future leadership. Walter Simmons seized the opening. Alvarez Lumber has always been a family company. With Robert facing criminal charges and no other heirs apparent, perhaps this is the time to consider strategic alternatives, including potential sale. The suggestion sent a ripple of reaction around the table. Several directors nodded thoughtfully while others looked uncomfortable. Catherine fixed Walter with a penetrating stare. Alvarez Lumber is not for sale. I built this company into what it is today, and I intend to see it continue independently. With all due respect, Walter pressed, you're 68 years old. Before this incident, Robert was your designated successor. Now that option is gone. Shareholders deserve clarity on the path forward. Catherine had anticipated this challenge. My grandson Emmett is 7 years old. The Alvarez legacy will continue through him with proper preparation and education. In the meantime, I'm implementing a leadership development program to identify and groom internal candidates for executive positions. She opened a second folder containing profiles of promising managers throughout the organization. These individuals represent the future of Alvarez Lumber, people who have demonstrated loyalty, innovation, and integrity. The discussion continued for hours, with Catherine addressing each concern methodically. By meeting's end, she had secured the board's reluctant support for her plan, though Walter's faction clearly remained skeptical. As directors filed out, Elena Vasquez lingered behind. That was masterfully handled. But Walter won't give up easily. He's been angling to force a sale to Northland Timber for years. Ernest always said Walter had the ethics of a timber wolf, Catherine replied with a grim smile. I'll be watching him closely. Elena hesitated before continuing. There's something else you should know. Some of us have received calls from Way Timber representatives even after the arrests. They're suggesting this was all a misunderstanding that could be resolved through a mutually beneficial partnership. The audacity stunned Catherine. They're still trying to acquire our technology even with their operatives in custody. Apparently they view this as merely a setback, not defeat. Elena shrugged. Just thought you should know they haven't given up. The revelation added another layer of complexity to an already overwhelming situation. Catherine thanked Elena for the information before making her way back to her office, where she found Joseph waiting with the FBI's lead investigator. Mrs. Alvarez, we have a situation developing, Agent Rivera began without preamble. We've uncovered communications suggesting a secondary plan was in place if the primary assassination attempt failed. Joseph handed Catherine a printout of an encrypted message recovered from Mei Li's devices. It's a contingency protocol. If she missed her check-in today, additional operatives were to initiate what they call Protocol Redwood. Any idea what that means? Catherine asked, scanning the document. Not specifically, but based on other communications, it likely involves either another attempt on your life or a direct attack on your research facility to acquire the technology by force. The threat assessment triggered immediate action. Joseph coordinated enhanced security for both Catherine and Emmett, while FBI agents were dispatched to monitor the research facility and other key Alvarez properties. Catherine returned home that evening to find Emmett waiting anxiously by the window. The boy had been reluctant to let her out of his sight since the arrests, fearful that the bad people might return. Did you talk to my dad today? His question carried the weight of desperate hope. Not today, sweetheart, but his lawyer says he's doing okay, and he sends his love. The small mercy of this half-truth seemed warranted given the child's fragile emotional state. Catherine led Emmett to the kitchen where Mrs. Vasquez had prepared his favorite dinner. As they ate, she gently explained the new security measures, the additional guards, the protocols for visitors, the temporary homeschooling arrangement. It's like we're in a fortress. Emmett observed his young mind finding a way to process the restrictions as an adventure rather than a response to danger. For a little while, Catherine agreed. Until we're sure everything is safe again. Later that night, after tucking Emmett into bed, Catherine retreated to her study to review the latest security reports from Joseph. The house felt eerily silent without Robert's occasional late-night piano playing or Marissa's laughter drifting up from the garden patio. A subtle click from downstairs broke the silence. Catherine froze, listening intently. The security system hadn't triggered, but years of business intuition had taught her to trust her instincts. Something wasn't right. She reached for the panic button Joseph had installed beside her desk, just as the study door swung open. A man she'd never seen before stood in the doorway, his Asian features impassive, a silenced pistol held casually at his side. "Mrs. Alvarez, please don't touch that button." His English was perfect, his tone conversational as if they were discussing the weather. "My associates are already with your grandson. Whether this night ends peacefully depends entirely on your cooperation." Cold fear gripped Catherine's heart. "If you harm that child, that outcome is entirely in your hands." The man gestured toward the hallway. "Shall we discuss terms?" In the living room, Catherine found 2 more men standing guard, while a 4th sat beside Emmett on the sofa. The boy's face was pale with terror, though he showed remarkable composure for his age. "Grandma, they have guns," Emmett whispered as Catherine sat beside him, pulling him protectively against her side. "Everything will be all right," she assured him, though her mind raced through options each more desperate than the last. Where were the security guards Joseph had posted? What had happened to Mrs. Vasquez? The apparent leader, a tall man with silver-streaked hair, stepped forward. "Mrs. Alvarez, we represent interests that still very much desire your wood treatment technology. The unfortunate business with your daughter-in-law has complicated matters, but our objective remains unchanged." Catherine maintained an outward calm that belied her racing heart. "Breaking into my home and threatening my grandson seems an unusual negotiation tactic. Traditional methods proved insufficient." He smiled thinly. "We're simply ensuring your full attention." "You have it." Catherine's arm tightened around Emmett's shoulders. "What exactly do you want?" "The complete formula and implementation protocols for your proprietary treatment process, access codes to the secure server where research data is stored, and your personal authentication for the patent transfer documents we've prepared." The comprehensive nature of the demand revealed their thorough understanding of Alvarez Lumber's security protocols. Only with Catherine's biometric authentication and personal codes could they access the protected information. "And if I provide these things, then we leave quietly. You and the boy remain unharmed. By morning we'll be out of the country, and this unpleasant episode becomes merely an unfortunate memory." Catherine had navigated countless high-stakes negotiations throughout her career, but never with her grandson's life hanging in the balance. She needed time. Time for the security breach to be discovered, time to find an advantage. "I'll need to access my secure terminal to retrieve the information you want. It's in my home office." The leader nodded to one of his men who disappeared down the hall, returning moments later with Catherine's laptop. "We've already bypassed the initial security. We need only your biometric authentication and master passwords." The prepared nature of their operation confirmed Catherine's suspicion that this had been planned well in advance, a contingency in case Mei Li's approach failed. She wondered how many other backup plans existed, how deep the conspiracy reached. "Before I cooperate, I need assurances." Catherine channeled every ounce of executive authority into her voice. "My grandson leaves this house first delivered safely to my attorney, Jessica Reynolds. Once I confirm he's secure, I'll provide what you want." The leader considered her for a long moment. "Your reputation as a negotiator is well earned, Mrs. Alvarez, but you're not in a position to make demands." "I'm not making demands. I'm establishing conditions for mutual benefit." Catherine met his gaze unflinchingly. "You want something only I can provide. I want my grandson's safety guaranteed. Once he's removed from the equation, you'll have my full cooperation." The standoff stretched for several tense seconds before the leader inclined his head slightly. "A reasonable compromise. The boy will be taken to your attorney and you'll receive confirmation of his arrival. Then you'll provide the complete technology package as discussed." Catherine turned to Emmett, cupping his face in her hands. "You're going to go with this man to Miss Jessica's house. Tell her exactly what's happening. Can you do that for me?" Emmett's eyes filled with tears. "But what about you?" "I'll be fine. Grandma has faced tougher negotiations than this." She kissed his forehead, whispering against his skin. "Tell Jessica to call Joseph. Code Sequoia. Can you remember that? Emmett nodded solemnly, his young face setting in determination. Code Sequoia. The leader assigned his youngest operative to escort Emmett, providing detailed instructions for the handoff and warning the man against any deviation from the plan. As they prepared to leave, Emmett turned back one last time, his small voice cracking with emotion. Grandma, remember what you told me about trees, the strongest ones bend but don't break. Catherine's heart swelled with pride at her grandson's courage. That's right, sweetheart, just like us. After they departed, Catherine was left with the leader and 2 remaining operatives. She moved to her laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard as she calculated her next move. She needed to buy time without appearing uncooperative. The system requires a series of authentications, she explained, beginning the complex login process. First-level security is biometric. She placed her thumb on the scanner, unlocking the initial interface. Now corporate network access. She entered a lengthy password, deliberately mistyping one character, which prompted a security challenge question. The system requires additional verification when accessed outside secure facilities. The leader watched impatiently as Catherine navigated the security protocols, unaware that each failed attempt triggered silent alerts to Joseph's security team. The system was designed to appear functional during a forced entry attempt while actually initiating lockdown procedures and alerting authorities. This is taking too long, the leader snapped after 15 minutes of seemingly productive but ultimately circular progress. Proprietary technology worth hundreds of millions doesn't sit behind a simple password. Catherine's tone conveyed professional irritation rather than fear. Unless you'd prefer I simply make something up, I'm sure your employers would be delighted with counterfeit formulas. The barbed comment hit its mark. The leader stepped back, gesturing for her to continue while checking his watch repeatedly. Catherine recognized the signs of increasing tension. The security team should have noticed the alerts by now. She just needed to maintain the charade a little longer. Her phone buzzed with an incoming text. The leader snatched it up, reading the message before handing it to Catherine. Your grandson has arrived safely at your attorney's home. Now complete the access protocol. No more delays. The confirmation of Emmett's safety loosened the tightest knot of fear in Catherine's chest. With her grandson secure, she could focus fully on her own survival and protecting the company's technology. The final authorization requires access to the secure server. I can initiate the connection from here, but the authentication must be completed on-site at the research facility. The system is air-gapped for security. The leader's expression darkened. You're stalling, Mrs. Alvarez. That wasn't our agreement. It's not a negotiating tactic. It's simple technological reality. Catherine closed the laptop decisively. If you want the actual formulas and implementation protocols, not just the theoretical research we need to go to the facility. The demand created exactly the dilemma Catherine had intended. Moving her from the house increased the risk of detection, but offered the only path to the technology they sought. She watched the leader weigh his options, calculating risks against the value of their objective. We'll go to the facility. Any attempt to alert security or deviate from my instructions will have severe consequences. Is that understood? Catherine nodded, maintaining her composed exterior while her mind raced ahead. The research facility would have additional security measures, more personnel, better surveillance, all potential advantages if she could exploit them. The drive to Alvarez Lumber's research center took 20 minutes, during which Catherine mentally reviewed the facility's layout, security protocols, and potential escape routes. The leader sat beside her in the back seat, his weapon concealed but ever present, while his 2 associates followed in a separate vehicle. The night guard recognized Catherine, immediately moving to open the gate before noticing her companions. His hand shifted toward the alarm button beneath his desk. Evening security check with some international investors, Catherine explained smoothly, using a pre-established code phrase that warned of coercion while appearing normal. These gentlemen are very interested in our treatment process. The guard's momentary hesitation confirmed he'd understood the warning. Of course, Mrs. Alvarez. I'll need to log them in. Company policy for after-hours visitors. The leader stepped forward, his posture subtly threatening. That won't be necessary. We'll be brief. Catherine intervened before the situation escalated. It's a simple formality, just names for the visitor log. The seemingly innocent request would trigger additional security protocols, but the leader remained oblivious to the danger as he provided false identities for the log. The guard processed them with deliberate slowness, buying precious minutes for the response team to mobilize. Inside the facility, Catherine led them through the sterile corridors toward the central research lab, her heels clicking on the polished concrete floors. Security cameras tracked their movement, though she wondered if anyone was monitoring the feeds at this hour. The main laboratory stood behind reinforced glass doors, requiring biometric authentication. Catherine placed her palm on the scanner, feeling the subtle vibration that indicated successful recognition. The doors slid open, revealing a state-of-the-art research space filled with specialized equipment and sealed containment units. The primary secure terminal is in my private office through there. Catherine indicated a door at the far end of the lab. It contains the master database with complete formulas and implementation specifications. As they crossed the laboratory floor, Catherine noted with rising hope that subtle changes in the environment suggested the emergency protocols had activated. The air handling system had shifted to security mode, evidenced by a barely perceptible change in background noise. The auxiliary display screens showed normal status indicators, but the specific pattern of lights indicated a silent lockdown. The leader remained unaware, his attention fixed on the prize so tantalizingly within reach. His associates spread out examining the laboratory equipment with professional interest while maintaining their guard positions. Catherine led the leader into her private office, a space designed for both security and functionality. One wall held a sophisticated computer terminal, while another displayed molecular models of the proprietary compounds that made Alvarez Lumber's treatment process revolutionary. The complete database is accessible through this terminal, Catherine explained, initiating the login sequence. It requires sequential authentication, biometric knowledge-based, and physical token. She placed her thumb on the scanner, entered a complex password, then removed a small key from her necklace, inserting it into a port beside the monitor. The system hummed to life, displaying a complex molecular diagram that represented the core of their proprietary process. The leader leaned forward eagerly, his caution momentarily overcome by proximity to his objective. Access the implementation protocols and transfer them to this. He produced a specialized drive designed to bypass copy restrictions. Catherine began navigating through the database, deliberately taking a circuitous path while watching for signs that help was approaching. The minutes stretched painfully as she maintained the pretense of compliance while seeking any opportunity for escape. A subtle change in air pressure signaled the laboratory's exterior doors had opened. The leader noticed too late as the office door burst open and a tactical team flooded in, weapons raised. Joseph led the charge, his weathered face set with grim determination. FBI hands where we can see them. The leader grabbed Catherine, pulling her against him as a shield while drawing his weapon. Stay back or she dies. The standoff froze everyone in position. Tactical team members with weapons trained the leader, using Catherine as protection, his associates in the main lab already subdued and restrained. Catherine met Joseph's eyes across the room, a lifetime of friendship allowing wordless communication. She gave an almost imperceptible nod, then went completely limp in the leader's grasp. The sudden dead weight caught him off guard, his grip loosening just enough for Catherine to drive her elbow into his solar plexus while twisting away. Joseph seized the momentary advantage, tackling the man while agents swarmed forward to secure the threat. Within moments, the leader was face down on the floor, hands cuffed behind him. Joseph helped Catherine to her feet, his expression shifting from professional intensity to personal concern. Are you hurt? Did they harm you? Catherine straightened her jacket, her dignity reasserting itself even as adrenaline coursed through her system. I'm fine. How did you know? The security alerts from your laptop, then Emmett delivered your message. Smart boy remembered it word for word. Joseph's pride in the child was evident. When the guard sent the visitor log warning, we had tactical teams already en route. Agent Rivera approached as the prisoners were led away. Mrs. Alvarez, we've identified these men as operatives working directly for Way Timber's military intelligence liaison. This goes beyond corporate espionage. It's state-sponsored industrial theft. The implications sent ripples of concern through Catherine. If a foreign government was directly involved, the threat could extend far beyond what they'd uncovered so far. What about my home, Mrs. Vasquez? Your housekeeper was drugged but unharmed. The security team was similarly neutralized. Professional work, non-lethal. The coordinated nature of the attack coming so quickly after Mei Li's arrest suggested a far-reaching conspiracy. Catherine had believed removing her daughter-in-law would end the threat, but now recognized they'd only scratched the surface. We need to completely overhaul security at all Alvarez facilities, she told Joseph as they walked out of the laboratory. And I want a full review of every employee hired in the past decade. If they embedded Mei Li, there could be others. The eastern sky was beginning to lighten as Catherine finally returned home, exhaustion weighing on her bones, but her mind still racing with implications and necessary actions. Jessica met her at the door, Emmett having finally succumbed to sleep on the attorney's couch after his ordeal. "He was incredibly brave," Jessica reported. "Recited your message perfectly and answered all the agent's questions without hesitation." Catherine gently lifted the sleeping boy, cradling him against her shoulder as she had when he was a toddler. "He shouldn't have to be brave like this. He's 7 years old." "Children are more resilient than we give them credit for," Jessica observed, "especially when they have strong role models." As Catherine carried Emmett upstairs to his bedroom, she reflected on the turbulent 24 hours that had exposed layers of betrayal and danger she never imagined when building Alvarez Lumber into an industry leader. The company faced threats from multiple directions: corporate rivals, foreign interests, even her own family. Yet watching Emmett's peaceful, sleeping face, Catherine felt renewed determination. This child represented the future of the Alvarez legacy, a legacy worth protecting at any cost. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same strength and resilience that had carried her through every previous crisis. "We bend," she whispered, echoing the wisdom she'd shared with her grandson, "but we do not break." In the 3 months following the home invasion, Alvarez Lumber transformed into a virtual fortress. Catherine implemented security protocols that rivaled military installations, biometric authentication at every access point, background checks that delved 3 generations deep for all employees, and encryption standards that government agencies would envy. The timber company's technological innovations remained its most valuable asset, and she would not allow another breach. The preliminary hearing for Robert's case concluded with a surprising outcome. Given his cooperation and the evidence of manipulation by Mei Li, the judge granted house arrest with electronic monitoring rather than pretrial detention. Catherine had arranged for him to stay in a company-owned residence near the main facility where he could be both monitored and protected. Emmett's first visit with his father had been tentative, the boy's trust shattered by revelations beyond his years. Catherine observed their interaction through the security feed, heart aching, as grandson and son attempted to rebuild their relationship amid the wreckage of betrayal. "Why did you do it, Dad?" Emmett's directness cut through the awkward pleasantries Robert had attempted. Robert's shoulders slumped, the weight of his actions visibly crushing him. "I was weak, Emmett. I made bad choices, then more bad choices to cover those up until I couldn't see a way out. I convinced myself no one would get hurt. But Grandma could have died." The child's moral clarity pierced through adult rationalizations. "Yes, and that's something I'll have to live with for the rest of my life." Robert knelt to his son's eye-level hands, trembling. "I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm going to spend every day trying to be the father you deserve." Catherine switched off the feed, giving them privacy for their painful reconciliation. Rebuilding trust would require more than words, but Robert's genuine remorse offered a foundation they could build upon. The corporate fallout proved equally challenging to navigate. International headlines painted Alvarez Lumber as the victim of Chinese industrial espionage, garnering sympathy, but also raising concerns about security vulnerabilities. Share prices fluctuated wildly as investors weighed the company's innovative technology against the chaos surrounding its leadership. Walter Simmons seized the opportunity to renew his push for selling the company. At emergency board meetings, he presented increasingly attractive offers from Northland Timber Framing acquisition as the only responsible path forward. Shareholders deserve stability and certainty in these turbulent times, Walter argued during a particularly contentious session, several board members nodding in agreement. Northland's offer represents a 40% premium over our pre-crisis valuation. We have a fiduciary duty to consider it seriously. Catherine had anticipated this maneuver. What Northland wants isn't our facilities or customer base, they want our proprietary technology. The same technology Way Timber failed to steal through espionage and violence. She distributed folders containing her counterproposal. I've commissioned an independent valuation of our treatment process patents alone. The technology is worth more than Northland's entire offer. Elena Vasquez examined the figures with raised eyebrows. These projections assume full-scale implementation across multiple markets, which is precisely our strategic plan for the next 5 years. Catherine activated the presentation screen displaying detailed growth projections backed by preliminary contracts with major construction firms across 3 continents. Selling now would be surrendering our future at precisely the moment when our technology is poised to revolutionize sustainable building materials. The boardroom battle continued weekly, with Catherine fighting to maintain control while addressing legitimate concerns about succession and stability. She initiated a formal leadership development program identifying promising executives to groom for senior positions. Though Robert would never lead the company as planned, she remained determined that Alvarez Lumber would continue as a family enterprise through Emmett. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings against Mei Lee and her associates expanded into an international incident. Diplomatic tensions escalated as evidence mounted of state-sponsored industrial espionage. Wei Timber issued public denials of involvement, claiming Mei Lee had acted independently, but documents recovered from her devices told a different story. Catherine received regular briefings from FBI counterintelligence, each revealing more extensive infiltration attempts than previously known. Mei Lee's operation represented just one prong of a sophisticated campaign targeting multiple American timber companies with advanced processing technologies. "We believe at least 3 other companies have been compromised," Agent Rivera explained during a secure briefing in Catherine's office. "Your security measures were superior to most, which is why they resorted to such extreme methods." Catherine absorbed this information with grim satisfaction. Her paranoia, as Robert had once called it, had at least partially protected Alvarez Lumber's most valuable assets. "Have you identified all their operatives within my organization?" "We've confirmed 3 employees with suspicious backgrounds, 2 maintenance workers with access to restricted areas, and a mid-level IT specialist, all placed within the past 5 years. The infiltration ran deeper than Catherine had imagined, triggering another round of security audits and personnel reviews. Each day brought new revelations about the elaborate conspiracy that had targeted her company and family. Through it all, Catherine maintained her grueling schedule, arriving at headquarters by 7 each morning and often working until midnight. The strain began to show in subtle ways, a slight tremor in her hands during morning meetings, momentary lapses in her normally flawless recall of business details, increasing reliance on blood pressure medication. Joseph noticed the changes during their weekly security briefing. "When did you last take a day off?" Catherine dismissed his concern with a wave. "I'll rest when my company is secure and my grandson's future is protected." "You can't protect anyone if you work yourself into a heart attack." Joseph's bluntness carried the weight of decades of friendship. "Ernest wouldn't want this for you." The mention of her late husband struck a chord. Ernest had always insisted on work-life balance, even during the company's most challenging periods. His wisdom echoed in her memory. "The trees that last centuries are the ones that grow slowly, Catherine. There are no shortcuts to creating something that endures." That evening, Catherine left the office at a reasonable hour for the first time in months, arriving home in time to help Emmett with his science project. The simple joy of assisting him with his model of photosynthesis provided a respite from the constant pressure of litigation, corporate politics, and security concerns. "Grandma, why does wood from different trees look different?" Emmett asked as they examined samples from the Alvarez educational collection. Catherine held up a piece of rich red mahogany next to pale maple. "Each tree grows in its own environment, facing different challenges. Some grow in constant shade, others in harsh sun. Some endure freezing winters, others tropical storms. These experiences shape their growth rings, their density, even their color." Like people, Emmett's perceptiveness continued to surprise her. "Exactly like people. The challenges we face shape who we become." Catherine squeezed his shoulder gently. "And you, my brave boy, are growing stronger every day." After tucking Emmett into bed, Catherine retreated to Ernest's study, pouring herself a rare glass of his favorite bourbon. The day's reports lay unopened on the desk: analysis of quarterly earnings updates on legal proceedings, security assessments of production facilities. Instead of diving into work as usual, she opened the bottom drawer where she kept Ernest's personal journal. His familiar handwriting filled the pages with observations about the business hopes for their family and insights about the timber industry's future. Catherine had avoided reading it since his death, finding the echoes of his voice too painful. Tonight, however, she sought his wisdom as she faced challenges that threatened everything they had built together. An entry from shortly before his heart attack caught her attention. "Catherine has built this company into something I never imagined possible. Her vision exceeds mine in every way. I only worry that she carries too much alone." She needs to build structures that can stand without her constant support, or both she and the company will eventually collapse under the weight. The words hit with prophetic force. Ernest had seen her tendency to centralize control to shoulder burdens alone rather than delegate. In the decades since his death, she had only intensified this pattern, becoming the irreplaceable center of Alvarez Lumber. The recent crises had exposed the vulnerability of this approach. Catherine closed the journal, a new clarity emerging from her husband's posthumous counsel. Protecting the company's future required more than securing its physical and intellectual assets. It meant creating leadership structures that could survive without her. The next morning, Catherine called a meeting with her executive team to announce a significant reorganization. She created 3 distinct divisions: research and technology, production and distribution, and international markets, each with its own president reporting to her as CEO. The structure would distribute authority while maintaining unified strategic direction. For the technology division, she selected Maria Hoffman, their brilliant lead researcher, who had worked alongside Catherine to develop the proprietary treatment process. David Chen, who had modernized their production facilities over the past decade, would head production. And for international markets, she tapped James Okafor, whose diplomatic background and language skills had already expanded Alvarez's presence in Europe and Africa. This restructuring isn't just about operational efficiency, Catherine explained as her executives absorbed the announcement. It's about creating a sustainable leadership model that doesn't depend solely on any individual, including me. The changes sent ripples through the organization. Some longtime employees viewed the restructuring as Catherine's first step toward retirement, while others recognized it as a strategic evolution necessary for growth. The market responded positively, with Alvarez stock regaining much of its post-scandal losses, as analysts praised the more robust organizational structure. Walter Simmons, however, saw the restructuring as a threat to his acquisition agenda. At the next board meeting, he arrived with reinforcements representatives from Northland Timber, prepared to present an enhanced offer directly to the full board. "This is highly irregular," Catherine objected as Walter attempted to bring the Northland team into the boardroom. Acquisition discussions, if deemed appropriate, would follow proper protocols, beginning with the Finance Committee. Walter pushed back with unusual aggression. Several board members expressed interest in hearing Northland's proposal firsthand. As chairman of the Finance Committee, I'm facilitating that dialogue. The confrontation revealed Walter's growing desperation. Catherine's reorganization had weakened his primary argument for selling that the company lacked leadership depth beyond her. Now he needed to secure an agreement before the new structure could prove its effectiveness. Catherine faced a pivotal decision. She could invoke her authority as CEO to block the presentation, potentially alienating board members who supported Walter. Or she could allow the presentation, demonstrating confidence that her vision for Alvarez Lumber would prevail against Northland's offer. Let them present, Catherine decided, settling into her chair at the head of the table. Transparency serves all our interests. Northland's CEO, Richard Harrison, delivered a polished pitch centered on synergies and market consolidation. The financial offer had indeed increased, now a 50% premium over Alvarez's pre-crisis valuation. But the details revealed Northland's true intentions. Their acquisition model separated intellectual property from operating assets, effectively allowing them to extract Alvarez's proprietary technology while dismantling its production capacity. When the presentation concluded, Catherine remained silent, allowing other board members to ask questions. Elena Vasquez proved particularly incisive, probing the implications for employees and production facilities. Marcus Chen questioned the valuation methodology, noting it undervalued future applications of their technology. Only when discussion began to wane did Catherine speak. "Mr. Harrison, your presentation was comprehensive regarding shareholder value, but conspicuously silent on one point. What happens to our proprietary wood treatment technology after acquisition?" Harrison's practiced smile faltered slightly. "As I mentioned, we'd integrate compatible technologies across our combined operation." "Compatible technologies," Catherine repeated thoughtfully. "And what about technologies deemed incompatible with your existing processes?" "Those would be evaluated for potential licensing opportunities or held for future development." Catherine nodded, then activated the presentation screen with a document she had prepared. This analysis tracks Northland's previous acquisitions of innovative companies. In each case, competing technologies were shelved rather than developed effectively, removing them from the market. She scrolled through detailed examples. "Your company doesn't want to utilize our technology, Mr. Harrison. You want to bury it to protect your existing product lines from competition. The documentation laid bare Northland's pattern of acquiring and neutralizing innovative competitors. Board members exchanged concerned glances as Catherine's evidence undermined the rosy picture Harrison had painted. Alvarez Lumber isn't just a collection of assets to be stripped and repurposed, Catherine continued. We're stewards of technology that can revolutionize sustainable construction globally. Our responsibility extends beyond maximum short-term profit for shareholders. By meeting's end, Walter's coalition had fractured, with several previously supportive board members expressing new reservations about Northland's offer. The acquisition proposal wasn't officially rejected, but its momentum had stalled significantly. As board members filed out, Walter lingered behind his expression, a mixture of frustration and calculation. This isn't over, Catherine. The pressure on this company will only increase. Catherine gathered her materials calmly. Pressure is what transforms ordinary wood into something extraordinary, Walter. Perhaps you should remember that. Their corporate battle would continue, but Catherine had won this critical skirmish. More importantly, she had articulated a vision for Alvarez Lumber that transcended financial metrics, a company defined by innovation and environmental responsibility rather than merely profit. The legal proceedings against Mei Lee and her associates moved toward trial, with prosecutors building a case that extended beyond individual criminal actions to implicate Wei Timber directly. Catherine provided testimony before a grand jury detailing the elaborate deception that had infiltrated her family and threatened her life. Facing overwhelming evidence and serious federal charges, Mei Lee's associates began seeking plea agreements, providing additional details about the operation in exchange for sentencing considerations. Their testimony revealed that Mei Lee had been groomed from childhood for industrial espionage, receiving specialized training before being deployed to target American timber companies. Robert's legal situation proceeded on a parallel track, complicated by his cooperation and the evidence of psychological manipulation. His attorney negotiated a plea agreement that acknowledged his role in the conspiracy while emphasizing his assistance to authorities after his arrest. The arrangement included substantial financial penalties, but limited his potential prison time to 3 years with eligibility for early release. Catherine maintained regular contact with the prosecution team, neither seeking special treatment for her son nor pushing for maximum punishment. Justice required consequences for Robert's actions, but vindictiveness would only compound the damage to Emmett. The boy continued to shuttle between Catherine's care and supervised visits with his father. Each visit showed incremental improvement in their relationship, Robert's genuine remorse slowly rebuilding the trust his actions had shattered. "Dad's teaching me about wood carving," Emmett announced one evening as Catherine helped him with homework. "He says Grandpa Ernest used to make beautiful things with just simple tools." The mention of this connection to Ernest, a side of Robert that Catherine hadn't seen in years, sparked curiosity. "Your father never showed much interest in woodworking when he was younger. He said he was too busy trying to be important back then." Emmett's simple relay of his father's words revealed a depth of self-reflection Catherine hadn't expected from her son. But now he wants to make things that last. Catherine visited Robert's workshop during his house arrest, observing unnoticed as he meticulously shaped a piece of walnut with Ernest's old carving tools. His hands moved with surprising skill, transforming the raw wood into an elegant chess piece, a knight, its details emerging from the grain with each careful cut. "I never knew you had this talent," Catherine spoke, finally causing Robert to look up from his work. A flush of embarrassment crossed his face. "Dad tried to teach me when I was a teenager. I was too impatient then, thought it was beneath me." He set down the carving tool. "The irony is, I've found more peace in shaping wood these past months than in all my years chasing status at the company." Catherine examined the chess pieces he had completed, each revealing meticulous attention to detail and an artistic sensitivity she hadn't recognized in her son. "Ernest would be proud of these. I'm making the set for Emmett." Robert ran his fingers over the grain of the half-finished knight. "Something to remind him that beautiful things can come from flawed materials if you take the time to find what's hidden inside." The workshop visit marked a turning point in Catherine's relationship with her son. Though the criminal charges and his betrayal remained unalterable facts, she began to see glimmers of the man he might become through this crucible of consequences. As summer turned to fall, Alvarez Lumber's reorganization began showing tangible benefits. The 3 division presidents brought fresh perspectives and specialized expertise to their areas, implementing improvements Catherine might never have considered. Maria Hoffman's technology division accelerated research into new applications for their treatment process, while David Chen streamlined production with innovative automation. James Okafor secured major contracts in European markets, previously resistant to American timber products. Catherine found herself in the unexpected position of having more time to mentor her leadership team to review strategic initiatives thoughtfully rather than hurriedly and occasionally to leave the office before darkness fell. The company didn't just survive without her constant involvement. In many ways, it thrived with the diversity of leadership perspectives. This organizational success proved timely as Mei Li's case finally proceeded to trial, requiring Catherine's regular presence in court. The proceedings revealed the full extent of the conspiracy with evidence of similar operations targeting other American companies. International media covered the case extensively, framing it as emblematic of broader economic espionage concerns. Mei Li maintained her composed facade throughout, showing emotion only when evidence of her relationship with Robert was presented. Whether her feelings for him had ever been genuine remained ambiguous, perhaps the one question the prosecution couldn't definitively answer. On the trial's 10th day, Catherine encountered an unexpected visitor in the courthouse corridor, a distinguished Chinese man whose features bore unmistakable resemblance to Mei Li. He approached with formal politeness, speaking flawless English. "Mrs. Alvarez, I am Wei Jian, chairman of Wei Timber Corporation." He offered a business card with an elegant bow. "I hoped we might speak privately." Catherine regarded him with cautious curiosity. This man had orchestrated the campaign against her company, potentially authorized violence against her family, yet appeared before her with the confidence of a legitimate businessman. Security personnel hovered nearby, alerted by Joseph to the chairman's presence. Catherine nodded for them to maintain distance while remaining vigilant. "What could we possibly have to discuss, Mr. Wei? Perhaps a resolution that serves both our interests." His expression revealed nothing of his thoughts. The diplomatic implications of this case have become problematic for many parties. Catherine led him to a private consultation room, security positioned outside. "You sent your daughter to infiltrate my family, Mr. Wei. You authorized attempts on my life. What resolution could possibly address those actions?" Wei Jian's composure slipped momentarily, revealing a flash of paternal concern. "Mei Li has always been overzealous in her methods. The operation was meant to be purely corporate intelligence gathering, not the personal entanglement it became." "You expect me to believe you didn't authorize the escalation to violence?" Catherine's skepticism cut through his attempted distinction. "Business is business, Mrs. Alvarez. Violence is messy, unpredictable, and ultimately bad for profits." Wei Jian straightened his already immaculate tie. "I am prepared to offer compensation for the disruption to your operations in exchange for certain considerations regarding my daughter's case." The audacity of his proposal momentarily stunned Catherine. After all the damage his operation had caused, he approached her as if negotiating a routine business settlement. "Mr. Wei, your company orchestrated industrial espionage against multiple American businesses. Your operatives committed serious federal crimes on American soil. Those aren't matters I can negotiate away, even if I wanted to." "Everything is negotiable, Mrs. Alvarez. That is the first principle of business." Wei Jian placed a document on the table between them. "My proposal includes substantial financial compensation, exclusive distribution rights in Asian markets for your existing product lines, and a pledge of non-competition in proprietary technology development." Catherine left the document untouched. "And in exchange, your testimony would emphasize that Mei Li acted independently, exceeding her authority. You would support her classification as a businesswoman who made unethical choices rather than as an agent of foreign intelligence." The carefully worded request would technically require no false testimony, merely emphasis on certain interpretations and omission of others. Wei Jian offered a path that could preserve Catherine's integrity while potentially saving his daughter from the harshest consequences. "My grandson nearly lost his grandmother because of your operation, Mr. Wei. My son faces prison because of your daughter's manipulation." Catherine rose from her seat, signaling the conversation's end. "Some damages can't be compensated with market access or financial settlements." Wei Jian gathered his proposal with the practiced movements of a man accustomed to negotiations rather than refusals. "Consider carefully, Mrs. Alvarez. This case has implications beyond your company or my daughter. International relations, trade agreements, market access for American companies in Asia all hang in delicate balance. Then perhaps you should have considered those implications before targeting American companies for technological theft. Catherine opened the door to summon her security team. I'll see you in the courtroom, Mr. Way. The encounter reinforced Catherine's determination to see the case through to its conclusion, regardless of political or economic pressures. Her testimony over the following days provided detailed accounts of Mei Li's actions, the corporate espionage operation, and its violent escalation. She neither embellished nor minimized, allowing the evidence to speak for itself. After 3 weeks of testimony, the jury deliberated for just 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all major counts. Mei Li faced sentencing that could exceed 20 years in federal prison, while her associates received shorter sentences commensurate with their cooperation. The verdict made international headlines, sending a clear message about American responses to economic espionage. Robert's sentencing followed a week later, his plea agreement resulting in a 3-year sentence with eligibility for early release after 18 months. The judge acknowledged his cooperation while emphasizing the seriousness of conspiracy to commit industrial espionage and the attempted harm to his mother. As guards prepared to take Robert into custody, Catherine approached her son one last time before his incarceration. The courtroom had emptied except for his attorney and the security personnel offering a moment of relative privacy for their goodbye. Take care of Emmett, Robert's voice cracked with emotion. Tell him I'll write every week. Catherine placed her hand on his arm, feeling the tremor running through him. We'll visit as often as allowed. Your place in the company will be there when you've served your time. Robert shook his head firmly. Not in management. I've proven I can't handle that responsibility. A new resolve straightened his posture. But I'd like to work in product development when I return. The wooden furniture designs I've been creating, I think there could be a market for handcrafted pieces that showcase our premium treated woods. Catherine recognized Ernest's influence in this vision. Her husband had always believed their timber deserved to become beautiful finished products, not just construction materials. We'll establish a workshop for you. Emmett says you've become quite skilled. It gives me purpose. Robert glanced toward the waiting guards. Something honest to build with my hands after all the damage I've caused. As her son was led away to begin his sentence, Catherine felt an unexpected sense of hope beneath her sadness. Robert had found something authentic within himself during this ordeal, a connection to craftsmanship and creation that might provide foundation for rebuilding his life after release. The months following the trial brought gradual stabilization to Alvarez Lumber. The reorganized leadership structure continued to prove its value, with each division president developing initiatives that strengthened the company. Walter Simmons' efforts to force a sale faded as quarterly results demonstrated the business's resilience and growth potential. Catherine formalized her succession planning, establishing a 5-year transition that would culminate in her retirement at 73. The plan named Maria Hoffman as her successor, with Robert potentially rejoining the company in a creative rather than executive capacity after serving his sentence. For Emmett, she established an educational trust and development program that would prepare him for potential leadership when he reached adulthood, should he choose that path. The timber industry took notice of Alvarez Lumber's transformation, with trade publications featuring profiles of Catherine's innovative organizational structure and technological leadership. Competitors who had circled during the crisis, hoping to acquire Alvarez at a discount, now found themselves struggling to match its rejuvenated market position. On the anniversary of the attempted murder, Catherine took a rare full day off, spending it with Emmett at the mountain cabin Ernest had built decades earlier. The simple structure of hand-hewn logs represented the foundation of their family legacy built before Alvarez Lumber became a corporate enterprise. Did you and Grandpa Ernest build this all by yourselves? Emmett ran his hand along a perfectly joined corner, marveling at the craftsmanship. With our own hands the summer before your father was born. Catherine smiled at the memory. Ernest said a person should understand how to build something real before trying to build a company. They spent the day hiking mountain trails, identifying tree species, and examining growth rings in fallen logs. Catherine shared stories of Ernest's early vision for sustainable forestry, his belief that timber companies should plant more trees than they harvested, and his dream of developing treatments that would make wood last for generations. As evening approached, they sat on the cabin's porch overlooking the valley, where Alvarez Lumber's first facility was visible in the distance, now dwarfed by the modern production complex surrounding it. "Grandma, will Dad be different when he comes home?" Emmett's question held the innocent directness of childhood, cutting through adult evasions. Catherine considered carefully before answering. I believe he will. Sometimes people need to lose everything to understand what truly matters. Like the forest fires. Emmett pointed to a distant hillside where new growth had emerged after a blaze 3 years earlier. You said they destroy but also help new things grow. That's right. The heat breaks open certain seed pods that wouldn't otherwise germinate. Catherine pulled him closer as the mountain air cooled. Your father is finding new parts of himself that might never have emerged without this difficult time. As darkness settled over the mountains, Catherine reflected on the journey of the past year from the moment of Emmett's whispered warning to this peaceful evening, watching stars appear above the forest. The company had survived attempted theft and violence. Her family had weathered betrayal and legal consequences. She had evolved from a controlling executive into a leader who empowered others. The threats hadn't disappeared entirely. Way Timber continued operations, presumably developing new approaches to acquire competitive advantages. Walter Simmons remained on the board, likely seeking other avenues to influence company direction. Corporate security would require constant vigilance in an increasingly competitive global market. Yet Catherine felt a profound sense of peace she hadn't experienced since Ernest's death. Alvarez Lumber stood stronger than ever, not despite the crisis, but because of how they had responded to it. The reorganized leadership team brought diverse perspectives and fresh energy. Emmett was growing into a thoughtful young man with his grandfather's appreciation for craftsmanship. Even Robert, despite his grievous mistakes, had found a potential path to redemption through creating beauty from raw materials. Look at that, Emmett. Catherine pointed to a massive sequoia visible in the moonlight, towering above the surrounding forest. That tree was already ancient when this country was founded. It survived lightning strikes, forest fires, diseases, and human interference. It's the biggest one in the whole forest, Emmett observed with childish wonder. And do you know why it's still standing when so many others have fallen? Its roots spread out to connect with the roots of other trees. They form a network underground, supporting each other through every storm and drought. Catherine squeezed his shoulder gently. That's the secret to surviving anything, not standing alone, but building connections that hold you steady when challenges come. The boy leaned against her, content in the simple wisdom. Below them, lights twinkled at the Alvarez facility where night shift workers continued the essential work of transforming raw timber into materials that would build homes, furniture, and structures lasting for generations. Catherine Alvarez had spent decades building a timber empire focusing on physical assets and technological innovation. Only now, in the aftermath of betrayal and danger, had she fully understood Ernest's most important lesson. The true legacy of Alvarez Lumber lay not in patents or profits, but in the connections between people who shared a vision of creating something meaningful from the forest's bounty. As Emmett drifted to sleep against her shoulder, Catherine whispered a promise to her late husband and to the future his grandson represented. We'll build something that lasts, Ernest, something worthy of the foundation you laid, something that bends with the storms but never breaks.